in the fall on a couple of fronts. And look, this is all going to come to a head because one impacts the other. The changes to start times and dismissal times, as well as changes to busing. Now, for example, we got a news release just a short time ago here from Canadian Parents for French. They say they are highly disappointed with the actions of the Calgary Board of Education and Rockview School District in their proposals to increase transportation fees for students attending alternative school programs while decreasing or eliminating the fees to those attending regular programs. In Calgary, these fee increases would see students in grades 6 to 12 purchasing Calgary Transit monthly passes if they reside more than 2.4 kilometers from their school of choice. Regular program students will get a rebate on their bus passes. Alternate program students have not been approved to receive the rebate, so must pay either $700 a year for public transit or $335 per year to ride the school bus. In the Rockview School District, the fee for French immersion is forecast to increase up to 47%. So there's those busing changes that are coming, and on top of that, as mentioned, some schools in the Calgary Board of Education are going to change their start and dismissal times. So parents at a couple of schools are pushing back against this, Canyon Meadows and Robert Warren, saying that both of these changes on the busing side and the start and dismissal time are going to mean big disruptions come fall. So joining us to talk a bit more about these changes, what the concern is, Tabitha Beaton joins us, creator of this coalition, a moderator for the Canyon Meadows, Robert Warren Parents Facebook page. Tabitha, thanks so much for joining us. I appreciate this.
Thanks very much for having me, Rob.
All right, so what are the programs then at these two schools?
These two schools, just to give you a bit of background on it, Rob, they started as alternative program schools a number of years ago when CBE was working to revitalize inner-city schools that were suffering from a lack of enrollment as more and more of our population moves outward towards the suburbs. So these programs were developed as a Spanish bilingual program, and over time, we've introduced, it started with Canyon Meadows School, which is an elementary school, and over time we've taken on Robert Warren School as our middle school, which is grades 6 to 9. And recently we've now added to that mix EP Scarlett High School, which is where kids in the Spanish bilingual program will move and transition through their school careers.
Okay. All right, so there's a lot of changes coming to a lot of different schools and to different programs in the fall. So how is this going to impact these schools in particular?
For these schools in particular, Rob, our biggest concern is that traditionally these programs have been treated as parallel programs where CBE has recognized that kids, once you're in the Spanish bilingual program, you're continuing with it. And so these schools, you go from Canyon Meadows to Robert Warren to EP Scarlett. It's not like other schools in the CBE program where you have an option to go to different junior highs or different high schools depending on your interests and your location and all of those things. Generally, once you're in this program, you're in. So traditionally, we've had school times and buses have been aligned between Canyon Meadows and Robert Warren School specifically. And a number of our families have siblings in both of those schools. So that alignment of school times and that alignment of transportation has made our ability to attend those schools manageable and make it possible. Now, with the new changes coming down the pipe, what they're proposing is a 45-minute difference start time and end time between Canyon Meadows and Robert Warren School, which at the surface appears like a pretty minimal change, but the impact for our families is significant in that it creates an hour and a half total through the course of a day that we have to now try to manage between a family having kids in one of the two schools. And then that ripple effect continues forward because they've also introduced in parallel to that a change in transportation for Robert Warren students, where, again, our grade 6 to 9 students, and are now requiring them to move to a Calgary Transit bus, so we don't even have the option of trying to share busing, again, with the students between the two schools, as we have been to this point.
Okay, but so you're talking primarily families that would have more than one child that would be in both schools? So if a family just has one child in one of these schools, how is that a disruption to them?
It is between the schools, as I've said. Once you have your children in these schools, the tendency, and if you have one child in, you tend to put the rest of your children in because it is one of those types of programs that you would engage your family in. Right. So traditionally, in between the two schools, we have about 300 families, and a lot of them have children in both schools. Even if you have children, for example, just in Robert Warren School, the transition from that school to going to Calgary Transit means that those grade 6 children are now being asked to move to a Calgary Transit model where traditionally they have been on yellow school buses shared with with Canyon Meadows School. Right. So now that cost to families, right now they pay $335 a year to send their children on the yellow school bus. That cost increases to $700 a year for them, which if we saw a measurable service increase or improvement could possibly be a palatable solution for us. But what we're seeing now is that kids at Robert Warren are actually going to have significantly increased times to get to school. So where they are now getting to school in maybe 45 minutes in a lot of cases, we're now looking at upwards of an hour and a half to 2 hours for these kids who are now going to have to take Calgary Transit and possibly transfer to 3 different buses through the course of their time going to and from school.
Well, yeah, that's a big difference. Was all of this avoidable, you think, then?
We absolutely believe it was avoidable, and I think that's the biggest challenge for us is that there was no engagement from CBE in terms of talking with our school community about how to maintain those parallel communities between the different school campuses. Right now, those schools are less than 1 kilometer apart. We share busing, which, according to CBE and the transportation changes they were introducing, the intent was to streamline transportation, to have buses serving multiple routes. Those buses today are serving those 2 schools that are 1 kilometer apart, and now they're simply come down and said we're separating the 2. Yellow buses will continue to Canyon Meadows, and now we're going to put this whole other school on a different time, and we're putting this other school on a different transportation option. Whereas if they'd come to the parent community and told us that what we needed to do was reduce our transportation costs, I think us as a parent community would be open to a whole variety of options, whether the cost was the same or not, options that worked for a more manageable solution for our families.
Right. I mean, this all seems to stem from changing the start times and the end times at Canyon Meadows, right? Did the start and finish times need to change?
We don't believe there needed to be. What CBE has told us through this process is the intent of changing the start and finish times was to allow for the buses, the yellow school buses, to do multiple routes, thereby reducing their costs of transportation. What we've said back to them is our buses were already currently serving 2 schools, 1 kilometer apart from one another. So if we could maintain the current bell times and maintain the current transportation, we felt that was still aligned with what CBE was trying to serve, but they won't engage in any conversation with us to explain how this process is better or more cost efficient.
All right, so where do you go from here? I understand there's a meeting planned for tomorrow night?
That's right. Tomorrow night at Robert Warren School, there will be, at 5 p.m., a discussion with CBE and Calgary Transit on the reason behind the changes for our Area 6 Spanish bilingual program. It's an opportunity for parents to come out and talk in person. I am a representative of 100 families through the coalition that we've started, so we will be there to voice our concerns and try to get some answers for how this is a more cost-effective and manageable solution for families in this alternative program.
Right, and I mean, this sounds like an issue not just with these schools either. A lot of different alternative programs throughout CBE. Seems like we're running into similar problems. Is that what you're hearing?
That's absolutely what we're hearing. There has been a disconnect between a number of the elementary and middle schools in the same programs. And so families across the city are struggling with how to make these scheduling and transportation changes that worked in parallel for these school communities that are now disparate, how to make them work for their families going forward.
All right. Well, Tabitha, thanks so much for making some time for us here today. Really appreciate this.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Rob.
Take care. That's Tabitha Beaton, creator of this coalition, moderator for the Canyon Meadows Robert Warren Parents Facebook page. You can find them on Facebook, so facebook.com/CM and RW Parents. Or just, search for them on Facebook if you're potentially affected by this. But as we point out, there's a lot of other programs, a lot of other schools facing similar issues heading into next year. 403-974-8255.